What's up, everyone? Welcome to Overhead Recipes. This time we're doing a review. Surprise! This is a rolling sharpener, knife sharpener. You probably see this on Instagram and TikTok in your feed for whatever reason if you're doing any sort of cooking or looking at any recipe. So what this thing actually does is it has a magnetic block, as you see in the right side. It has two surfaces, a 20-degree and a 15-degree surface. It's supposed to keep the angle constant as opposed to when you're using a whetstone where you have to use your skills to keep the knife at the constant angle. On the other end of it, instead of a whetstone, you have a rotating sharpening disc. So this has a rough surface on one side. One side is 400 grit, the other side is 1000, and both of them are seated on a very smooth rolling bearing with a rubber edge that allows you to just roll this sharpening blade back and forth. So essentially, instead of moving the blade back and forth, you're moving the sharpener back and forth. Surprisingly, this also comes with a pretty user-friendly user manual. I think this is quite surprising for a product like this. It has all the languages that you need, as well as the instruction on how to maintain it and how to keep yourself safe from cutting yourself. All right, having looked at that, let's give it a try, right? We're going to use a cheap IKEA paring knife for this. Again, you can see that there's a 20-degree surface and a 15. I'm going to go straight to a 15-degree for this one simply because it's such a small blade. I'm going to start off with a 400 grit, which is the rougher surface, and then later on, we're just going to see how it goes, right? So how I'm going to use this is I'm basically rolling this device back and forth in short motions, but in very, very light pressure. You don't want to put a lot of hard pressure because it will tilt the blade, and you also cannot feel whether or not you're shaving metal or not. It's a really by feel thing, and you have to move the blade up and down across the magnetic surface just to make sure it doesn't flip around. Make sure you do both sides if you can count or at least like estimate that to make sure that both sides receive the same amount of sharpening. That would be ideal because you'll be able to form like the perfect letter V shape knife edge, blade edge, rather than having one side being more sharp than the other. So again, it's a pretty simple process. You're just going to roll it back and forth, and you can see that there's some black marks there that pretty much are the metal shavings that got transferred into the magnetic surface. So we're going to give this a try with a celery, simply because I don't have a tomato at home. And pardon my knife skills, it's pretty poor. But as you can see, the celery, even if it's hard and fibrous, the blade is just sliding through really, really well. And I'm gonna try to do as thin of a slice as I can with my limited knife skills. And I'm trying to use the edge of the blade. Unfortunately, this blade is not like perfectly straight, so it has a little bend in it, so there are some parts that might be twisted out. But look at that, look how smooth that cutting motion is, and look at how thin I can get this. Just the initial insertion of the blade allows you to get a precise cut, and as they always say, like a sharp knife is a safe knife. You don't want to use a blunt knife because it could slip and pretty much slide onto your finger or whatnot. So far this is promising, even with a cheap IKEA paring knife. Look at this. I'm holding the celery freehand and I'm just like gliding, slicing the celery through, and look how thin that celery is coming off. Awesome. So far I'm quite surprised. I'm pretty happy with this. It surely saves you a lot of time, not having to soak a whetstone and develop the skill to keep it flush and not carve off more blade than necessary. This is really cool. Now let's try to our my main like kitchen knife, which is this big ass cleaver that I got like 7, 8 years ago on Amazon in Australia. Um, you can clearly see immediately what the problem is, right? This is like a 6, 4, 5, I don't know, 5, 6 inch tall knife, and if you stick the magnetic side in, your rolling sharpening edge, the roller thing, it's not gonna hit the blade. it's just gonna sit there. It's kind of silly, right? So obviously I have to find a way to elevate this roller thing. So looking around the kitchen and what I have my old whetstone, and I tried to use this a couple of times, but you can clearly see on the left side what the problem is. It's not wide enough to cover both rollers, so now the rolling sharpening thing is actually tilted. So we need something taller. Oh, be careful, don't do what I just did of hovering your arm above a blade. So be safe, don't be like me. So now I found that this biscuit tin, this cookie tin or whatever, that is significantly higher, and here you go, it's perfect that you can rub the blade right around the middle of the blade, the roller around the middle of the blade. So again, because this knife is a lot longer and the magnetic holder thing is only like 4 inches, 3 inches wide, you may need to move the magnetic blade forward and back of your blade and just do like sections at a time for the cleaver, because you can't do the entire edge straight away. So now I only did the 20-degree sharpening on and I want to see how it goes. It is sharp, but as you can see, it's still kind of struggling to cut through the entire surface of the celery, simply because the blade is not designed for this kind of precision work. It's supposed to chop by weight, right? The actual sharp surface of the cleaver is only like 2 millimeters, but we're trying to make it cut through a celery, and the blade is way too thick to do that. So let's move on to the 15-degree. Again, still using the 400 grit side, and I'm just going to go back and forth on both sides. And you can see all the metal shavings that gets accumulated at the top of the blade. And clearly the thicker residue are the parts that have more metal got shaven off. And let's try this again. And look at that, the blade just slides straight through. Again, it's not as precise as the paring knife, and this blade is a little rounded at the bottom edge, so we're not going to get a super even cut. But look at how thin I can get this cleaver to cut a piece of celery. Look, this is like translucent almost. Like I have no idea how thin this is, but look, the blade is just showing through. And this is a friggin' cheap cleaver that just like 6 months ago or 8 months ago, I actually cut my middle finger, a chunk off my middle finger, because this blade was so blunt and it just slipped. And look at this now, it's just gliding through a piece of grainy and fibrous celery like it's a piece of fruit. Again, pretty happy with this. You can find this online, I think. In the US it might be more expensive, but go scour Amazon and cheaper places. And if you're in Asia, click on the link below, maybe that can help you out. I got this for about 20 bucks, and I hope you like this video. See you next time.